I've got a red light on my screen. What?
Live.
Oh, that's why we're in the recording room.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, it's always recording.
It is always recording. I should have an extra light. That's fair. I should change it up, have an extra light there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ongoing reading of Anti-Oedipus, Take 4, making our way slowly through the last bits of Chapter 1. There's a lot going on here. This is going to be a lot. This is actually going to be a huge amount. Oh, fuck. I am beaten up. Last night I was working on my car all night, and it didn't go in great. Doesn't matter. Still beat the shit out of my fucking hand, and I have bruises all up and down my arm that are completely swollen and lots of cuts, which is, you know, it's how you know you were doing some good work, as the old people used to say. Over the last...
Did you take the opportunity to psychologically torture Dexter by telling him he's holding the light wrong?
Aziz, light! No, I was doing it alone. Dexter didn't come out and bother me. He doesn't have a lot of interest in car work. Plus, he had his Steam Deck. He was happy inside.
Oh. He missed the canon event of being bullied as a child while his father works on a car.
We'll find out. All right. In this section, we're kind of going through the nature of how the cuts of desire come to form and what they do and how they sort of work. Because again, this is all about the productive processes. This is not that there is a lack. It is the opposite of a lack philosophy and ontology. There is no lack. There is no missing. Everything is produced. The challenge comes with understanding that that means everything is produced. And as such, productions end up having effects on other productions. In the real world, for example, you might have certain production facilities in different areas, as well as the production of the trucks that go between them. These things sort of impact the ability for production to take place where it can and the material realities of it. And of course, at the end of that, as capital begins to flow and capital has its own interests, you find that capital invests itself in very certain places, which actually can leave some industries completely bereft of capital. But it's not necessarily that those things weren't producing. It's just the nature of falling back on how this thing works, how these things come to imply and sort of impinge on each other. We've just sort of finished talking about the second syntheses and the chains, the discovery, as they talk about it, of the symbolic unconscious that Lacan was putting in place, what Lacan was building as he was doing that. They've just sort of established that the chains of the second syntheses are not ultimately linguistic yet. They are jargony. They are exclamations without a significant amount behind them. They're non-signifying signs that are thrown around, are registered on the body without organs. The writing that they constitute at this point is transcursive, is the word that they use for it, not discursive. For more or less discussion, transcursive means sort of across all of it. Things are polyvocal, not biunivocal. The ending of the previous paragraph, as we went through sort of the master signifier and the way desires set up, all of that fun stuff, they end with this line: to produce desire, such is the only vocation of the sign in all the senses in which it is machined. The ending is that the sign's only vocation, the only work that it actually does, is this. So, how, more or less, right? To do this, we need to get into a closer description of the machine itself. The the setup as we sort of make our way through it, and I'm kind of going to prefigure a lot because there is a ton of semiotics in here, and I've kind of over-indexed with my new video that's coming out this week about Yomslevian semiotics. So this is Yomslev. This is like, all of this is Yomslev. All of this is Yomslev with a lot of Klasowski, because remember, desire invests in this infrastructure. Desire is the infrastructure of the social. How we get to that point is through the production of cuts, which produce semiotic elements, a-signifying signs, that then become organized and become, as we understand them, signifying, become all of these things. It's at some point this week, Anton, with any luck. So the setup we're going to be going through is more or less a description of all of this. If the first part of the machine, the first characteristic was cut extraction, the first that operates directly on the flux, on desire, on that moment of shift and change itself, which is the connective syntheses, right? The second characteristic is going to be cut detachement, the cut and detaching, right, of the entire process. It's the remainder, the thing left over during the cut, because there always is a remainder. There's always an excess in every step of this. So we're going to be going through the 3 steps of this and how it functions. First, we're going to be defining detachment against extraction. We're going to be talking about the figures of bricks, which is a really useful way to talk about this. And again, Yomslev's sort of version of this. The brick is the unit of registration as a thing. And then ultimately making our way through sort of a neurological foundation for this. All in. It's a lot. So be ready for that. And as far as I know, off we fucking go. These chains are ceaselessly the site of detachments in all directions, everywhere schizzes that are valid for themselves, and which must above all not be filled in. Such then is the second character of the machine, cut detachments, which are not confused with cuts extractions. The latter bear on continuous flux, refer back to partial objects. The former concern heterogeneous chains and proceed by detachable segments, mobile stocks like blocks or flying bricks. One must conceive each brick emitted at a distance and itself composed of heterogeneous elements, not only enclosing an inscription with signs of different alphabets, but also figures, and then one or several straws, and perhaps a corpse. The extraction of flux implies the detachment of chain, and the partial objects of production suppose the stocks or the bricks of registration, in the coexistence and interaction of all the syntheses. How could there be partial extraction on a flux, without fragmentary detachment in a code that comes to inform the flux? If we said just now that the schizo is at the limit of the decoded flux of desire, it had to be understood of the social codes where the despotic signifier crushes all the chains, linearizes them, biunivocalizes them, and makes use of the bricks as so many immobile elements for an imperial Chinese wall. But always the schizo detaches them, unseals them, carries them off in all directions to recover a new polyvocity, which is the code of desire. Every composition, and also every decomposition, is done by mobile bricks. Diaskesis and diaspasis, Manikow said. Either a lesion extends following fibers that connect it to other regions and provokes at a distance incomprehensible phenomena from a purely mechanistic point of view, but not machinic, or a disorder of the humoral life entails a diversion of nervous energy and the institution of broken, fragmented directions in the sphere of instincts. The bricks are the essential pieces of machines of desire from the point of view of the procedure of registration, at once component parts and products of decomposition that are localized spatially only at such or such a moment, in relation to the great chronogenous machine that is the nervous system. melodic machine of the music box type with non-spatial localization. What makes the unequaled character of the book by Monaco and Morgue, that by which it infinitely surpasses all the Jacksonism from which it draws inspiration, is the theory of bricks, of their detachment, their fragmentation, but it is above all what such a theory supposes, to have introduced desire into neurology. It's going to be a lot, so do not hesitate to type out questions or issues or anything that you're sort of seeing as we go. There's a lot said here. Oh, and Noah, this is very much about also what I wrote you a moment ago. We'll get to that. We can talk afterwards too. That'll be fun. I guess we go sentence by sentence, bit by bit. These chains are ceaselessly the site of detachments in all directions, everywhere schizzes that are valid for themselves, and which must above all not be filled in. Come on, stay on there. There we go. Okay. There's kind of two things that are happening here at once. First, we're relocating the argument from the previous paragraph, and they're moving it a little bit forward, sort of in line, right? Because we've been talking about chains as inscription, as signs, as writing on the real, and that's capital R real. If you remember from the previous, this is very much that entire thing. Oh, Anton. I have no idea what some of these gifts are fucking for. You people are all nuts. I mean, it is aimed at Lacan. This is very much that. The first thing it's doing is talking about that side of the thing, right? What happens to the chains? And what happens is they become sites of detachments. They break apart everywhere, constantly. They're always coming apart. Huge, big deal. First part. The second thing, and it's a lot, it's like significant for this paragraph, is that it forbids in advance this interpretation of things that would allow the gaps to be deficiencies. The schizzes, the cracks, the breaks, the space, the schizzes that are valid for themselves, which must above all not be filled in. This is not saying that lack is generated. It is saying that there is what you might call a negative space. It's an emptiness. It's a nothing that is part of this, that they're sort of driving at. And again, this is right at Lacan. When it comes to gaps and dependencies and all that, because the phrase that they're using here is really particular towards how Lacan talked about lack, very much how he talked about lack, because that's what they're talking about. But they're saying that the schiz, the process of the schiz, is not a hole in some structure or in some object or signifier that we are there to plug up, or that needs to be plugged up, or is a void sucking in everything around it, right? Instead, the schiz is a positive event with its own standing, its own setup. This is the same argument if we go back and we look at how they talked about the BWO, right? When it comes to the disjunctive synthesis is inclusive, like on its own. So breaks in chains, as we're talking about here, don't function as the exclusivity or the exclusion or the elimination of these things, right? They're not absences that demand being completed. They're absolutely, above all, not to be filled in. They are inclusive without needing to fill in all of the negative space, right? Does that make sense? So they're more like splits, not breaks in half. They're cuts. They're cuts. And the cuts are themselves productive. Yeah, exactly, Turn. You say the cuts are productive. The breaks are productive. The actual machinery is connection, slicing. The slice in the space that's created there is not to be filled. Right? It's not to be filled by now we've got negative space, we've got to fill. No, it's that break is actually the productive element. It allows resonance. I mean, we're going to come to talk about a lot of these things, but it allows a lot of shit to happen without needing to fill it in. The productive is that thing.
They conjugate cut, specifically couperet, in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
And a couperet is also an architectural feature, which is sort of like part of a flood wall where it's intersected by a passage, and it's like it functions either by being opened or by being closed, allowing or not allowing things through. You know what I mean? Like it functions by cutting.
It functions in the cut. Yes, exactly.
By being a cut and by cutting, it both functions.
Yeah, the cut is productive. The cuts are productive. And that's the thing that they're sort of driving at really, really particularly. The next sentence kind of hits that. Just real quick, Values Last Tango asks, by positive, do I mean productive? Yes. Generally, I always mean productive. In this particular thing, I mean that it's forward. It's forward production. It's not, when we talk about the negative in a lot of these circles, we're not necessarily talking about there being negative space. Like if I draw a circle, but inside it's empty, it's negative space. This is not the kind of negative I'm talking about. That's like, again, still positive as a negative. Klosowski nails it when he talks about how you can say that a circle is empty, but that is still not a negation because you're claiming emptiness. You need to produce the awareness of the emptiness. It is not, nothing is a pure negative for Klosowski. And for this, it's very much that same sentiment that they're talking about here, versus the Lacanian, Zizek'ian, Hegelian negative that is actually the base of things, that there is an emptiness or something missing that must be dealt with or filled, or that we've got to work on. That is not what we're talking about. It's all forward production, more or less. And this is the second characteristic of the machine, cuts detachments, which are not confused with cuts extractions. So a lot of this is the taxonomy of cuts, of couperet, the cuts into things. And again, a lot of that has to do with Yomslev and his semiotic sort of structure, right? These types of cuts map into the three syntheses that are themselves passive. The prélèvement is the connective synthesis of production. This is detachement, which is the disjunctive, the cut detachment. And we're going to get to the conjugate at some point. But for them, cut here is never just simply interruption. That's the thing they're kind of fighting against. And a lot of their language is really trying to stave that off and make that like, no, don't go that direction, right? Because Hurley even translates it as simple interruption often, that it's just interruption. But it's even interruption is a productive cut that creates. In the opening of the book, every cut is a machine. Every machine is a cut of flux in relation to the machine that it is connected to. And yet it itself is flux in relation to the machine connected to it. This is the stacking sort of process. So these cuts are always simultaneously breaks, but also continuation, right? So the thing that distinguishes all these different types of cuts that are in it is not really a degree of severity. It's not like it's a total cut or a partial cut or any of that shit. I used to read this way. That is not the thing. And they're very clear about it, actually, and it's very clear in the French. It's instead about what register the cuts operate within. Is it on the flux? That's one cut. Is it within the chain of signification, which is this, or is it within the subject, which is to come later? that is a big one that they're sort of driving at. How does the process of cutting and detachment relate to the BWO? Oh, well, don't worry. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. Actually, we're getting there in this, and then I think the next paragraph too. So I'm going to hold that. We'll get there. Interesting. Brick Griff, did you write that in French or English on YouTube? Because you wrote coup de grace, but it automatically translated it in YouTube for me, but I hate YouTube. It's automatically translating now. I hate that so much. It translated it to fucking English for me. Fucking what the fuck? Oh, that's frustrating. Fuck it. Doesn't matter. Let's keep going. The latter cut distractions bear on continuous flux. They refer back to partial objects. Very short, very functional, basic thing. The continuous flux, the cuts extraction, right? Is going to be, they're being very specific here. This applies to flux. It produces or presupposes partial objects. It is not cuts extractions. That's the first thing we were sort of talking about, right? Again, this is not about severity of cuts. Yeah, it's not the severity of cuts. Again, talking about the taxonomy of it. They're being very specific here. That's all. They're basically continuing that point. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? The former, which is the cuts detachments, concern heterogeneous chains, proceed by detachable segments, mobile stocks, like flying blocks or flying bricks. Extraction in this system. Does it start at 3 or 3:30? It starts at noon PST, so I have no idea. We've been going for half hour. It's the same every week. I know I've been late on occasion, but it is the same every week. Apologies, Collie. When we're talking about extraction, we're not talking about the previous syntheses. This is instead, because extraction is something that is more or less continuous, more or less. Here is something that is of the heterogeneous chains. We're already at something that is not continuous. It's already the result of the previous cuts, the cuts in partial objects that have allowed these bricks to sort of be. That's kind of why they start using this. And again, it's not really metaphorical. They are being more or less literal. It's as close to metaphor as they get, but it's up there because it's already heterogeneous. It's already an arrangement of things that are not alike. The former concern heterogeneous chains. Bunch of shit that is just not the same. You can't detach from a homogeneous medium. That's not how it works. A homogeneous medium is cut. That is the first synthesis. This is detachment. Detachment is how you detach chains. You pull them apart. You have chains at different places. Detachable segments, mobile stocks. This is, again, taking Marx. Mobile stocks is not a cute phrasing. That is them saying, hey, do you remember Marx? You remember Marx where he's talking about literally mobile stocks, like stock of food or gold or commodities or whatever. Right? That's the thing. I'm hoping that makes sense. Because again, detachment is going to presuppose that there's joints, that there's articulation, that there is some other thing that's happening there in kind between various parts. So you have a bunch of parts, and each part is different. It's heterogeneous and it's jointed. It's reconnected and put together, sure, but it's disjointed. There's relations between unlike things. So it's a different relation to its own material here than the connective synthesis and its extraction and its cut extraction. Yeah, the homogeneous is like the slice of ham. We see the same slice being constantly cut. We assume the infinite ham hock in the sky. It only makes sense if you've read the previous. It's again, one of the weirder ones. But for this, we've got all of the slices, and the slices are different in every single way. Now we've got a bunch of them, but here the slice is not to cut and extract. This is to detach from the chain. This is to pull it apart. This is not imposing the break, right? There are already breaks there. This is finding and mobilizing the breaks or the minor groupings of things or whatever that is constitutive of the chain's unlikeness. If you remember, the previous paragraph talked about how there was no chain that is homogeneous, because again, that's what the flux is. This is necessarily resembling successions of characters from different alphabets. They talked about this with ideograms, with pictograms, the elephant that suddenly appears, all of that. And the economic charge from Marx that they're bringing in, the stock as inventory. This is mobile inventory elements, the things held in reserve, because registration here accumulates. That's what registration does. It accumulates. And as it accumulates, you have a lot of mobile stocks. That's right. They're modular, right? They're able to fuck around. But what they do is the recording surface being a surface of stockpiling. It's going to be important as we get to chapter 3, but understand this is where stockpiling sort of comes from and the reserve of things comes from. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The blocks are flying bricks. Bricks volants. Bricks are very. They use this word a lot. They're going to talk about a thing a lot. But if we want to talk about it from Marx's perspective, that's also for Yumslebs, bricks are a thing that can be stacked super easily, right? Bricks are incredibly modular. And I've already used that. That's what we're talking about here. These are bricks that can be placed in lots of different ways, assembled against each other. They can build a huge wall because a brick is what a wall is made of. A flying brick would be what a wall is being unmade to. There's process constantly going. Always. So they say one must conceive each brick emitted at a distance, itself composed of heterogeneous elements, not only enclosing an inscription with signs of different alphabets, but also figures, then one or several straws, and perhaps a corpse. I love it. A brick is not just the simple, purely commoditized element, right? It's not just equally identical, every brick is the same, right? That's not the setup that's happening here. The brick is a heterogeneous composite itself. Each brick is composed of heterogeneous elements. This is actually true of actual bricks. To some point, they're just made of a bunch of different shit. You just pour a bunch of stuff in and out comes a brick, kind of, more or less. So when we have a unit of detachment from the chain that is a brick, it's already an arrangement of things. It's already itself heterogeneous. There's no atom of registration. There's no minimal sign that is inscribed here. Every level at this synthesis, every level of this is reproducing heterogeneity. Heterogeneity. That's a word. It's reproducing everything as heterogeneous. This is as like anti-structuralist as you can get, genuinely. Like, this is like super anti-structuralism. It's a good line too, but it's like, because linguistics, generally speaking, needs like Levi-Strauss, for example, or Lacan. Levi-Strauss had the mytheme, right? The phoneme is pretty common in a lot of linguistic circles and all of that. They're saying, no, there's no base. That's just it. There's no base. So if there's no like thing at the bottom, because again, the thing that at the bottom, the closest we get is that there is the homogeneity of the chaos of partial objects. That is the flows of desire that are cut, the machine that cuts into bricks, the bricks placed and then disassembled as well. This process constantly happening. The contents of the brick are not only enclosing an inscription with signs of different alphabets, but also figures, and then one or several straws and perhaps a corpse. They're making a really huge thing. It's a fascinating line. An inscription of all of these things is like a compressed history of inscription. They're like, this is chapter 3. For those of you who've been down this road before, you should be recognizing chapter 3 really hard here. Like super, super hard here. Because it's a different alphabet, so also figures, then one or several straw, and then perhaps a corpse. The compressed history sort of stamped into it, right? So like the Mesopotamians, right? The stamped name being put on it for the royals, for example. Like these things being added, the pictographic, the figures. They don't mean figures like people, they mean figures like ideograms, for example. That's what it's, as I read it, that's what they're talking about, figura. Figura. This is more or less, again, Yumslev sort of playing through here. But these things become absorbed, and then brick makers, because straw as a thing is the material of like mud brick, and then this is the story of brick making, right? Like it's just layers on layers. They're sort of running through all of this. I dig the language. It's really great. And perhaps a corpse, once upon a time, they would literally inter bodies into it was not a good day for a lot of people, but the foundation sacrifice, they would add a corpse to it. It's a big deal. Again, the layers, the setup, what they're talking about, all these things of time are within them and sort of built into them and into the process of their production. So each brick is itself like a recording surface, but it's also a product of actual labor, and it's also a tomb. That's how I read this. Okay? Because that's chapter 3 gets us to inscription, the extraction of labor, and the marking of bodies. That's what they're lining up here really early. Yeah. The extraction of flux implies the detachment of chain, and the partial objects of production suppose the stocks or the bricks of registration in the coexistence and interaction of all the syntheses. A mistake a lot of people make, and it's a fine mistake. It's okay. It's okay if you made it. I've made it. This is not 3 steps, okay? These are not 3 stages of a thing. This is extremely happening almost all at once. And this is them making that. There's a presupposition mutually between each of these stages. You can't have extraction, after all, without detachment. So it's not stage 1 and then we do stage 2. If there's no stage 2, there's no stage 1. If there's no stage 1, there's no stage 2. They come at once. So the problem we end up having is like, how do we talk through this? Because it's the coexistence and interaction of all the syntheses, they're all happening at once. This is not a developmental sequence. Figure out the first, then the second, then the third, right? This is directly contradicting that reading, which is very common and fucking super wrong. Super wrong. In fact, doing so and talking about them as three separate stages is literally in chapter 2 as one of the paralogisms. Just mentioning, like literally they name it outright as that. But this is them saying these things come at once. That's the point. The extraction of flux implies the detachment of chain. The partial objects of production suppose the stocks of the bricks of registration in the coexistence and interaction of all the syntheses. So they continue, how could there be partial extraction on a flux without fragmentary detachment in a code that comes to inform the flux? They're going to be answering, this is obviously a rhetorical question of all of that. Extraction here happens sur a flux, on it, sur, from a position of contact with the surface of the flow, of the flux. That's where it happens. So if that's the case and detachment happens inside a code, right? Don, D-A-N-S, dons a code. The difference in preparation is the difference between the two syntheses being stated very particularly and spatially. Production works on flows from alongside, but registration works within the code. Okay? We'll get to like how this works and how they go, but how can there be partial extraction on a flux? And they're very particular about the wording here, without fragmentary detachment in a code that comes to inform the flux. And inform is really interesting here. This is it's literally that in French, informer. It's to inform. It doesn't mean to like tell someone a thing. That's not the point. Inform. They mean it like the Aristotelian way, right? This is giving form to inform a flux. It's tough to say how I would translate this otherwise, because in English, inform, like it gives information to. I've informed you that this is coming. But that's not, it's a code that comes to inform the flux, right? And the twist here is really interesting because the hylomorphism, the idea of like giving form as a thing imposed outside on inert matter. But the code comes to inform the flux, which is interesting. It marks the informing here as like an arrival, an event that is sort of contravening or supervening. The wording is interesting for that. This is like Simondon's critique of that, because they're talking about fragmentary detachment in the code comes to inform the flux. It seems to come to inform the flux. This is how it feels. This is a thing. It's fascinating. And it's, how does this work? That's what they're kind of getting at. I'm so lost. Are we talking about three? We're talking about the second syntheses, the cuts of the second, which are the detachment. This is the detachment part of the second syntheses. The first synthesis is cut. The cut is made by a machine of desire that becomes then the source of desire for another cut that follows. It is a continuous binary process in all directions, in all ways. Boom, boom, boom. Those cuts have extraction. The cut that is made itself is the material, more or less, that ends up building into chains of meaning or whatever that then get pulled apart. Those links get pulled apart as bricks and come to fill the body without organs or cover or inflame or infill. And we'll get kind of to that. But that's what they're talking about right now. This is the setup. Right? This is the setup. So they say, If we said just now that the schizo is at the limit of the decoded flux of desire, it had to be understood of the social codes where a despotic signifier crushes all the chains, linearizes them, biunivocalizes them, makes use of the bricks as so many immobile elements for an imperial Chinese wall. Okay. Language here is very, God, it's a lot. Okay. The despotic signifier here is going to be built out a lot down the road. The despotic signifier, we could also call the master signifier in Lacanian terms, if you know the basic thing. And they're sort of stating here, and it's again Lacanian sort of setup, they're clarifying they're clarifying kind of what decoded flux is. If we said just now the schizo is at the limit of decoded flux of desire, it had to be understood from social codes where the despotic signifier crushes chains. They're being very specific here. The schizo doesn't escape coding. And they'll get to this a lot. Again, don't valorize the schizo or the schizophrenic. Don't do that. The code of desire is what the schizo recovers. And they'll continue to sort of state this, right? What the schizo does with it is the next sentence, but always the schizo detaches them, unseals them, carries them off in all directions. This is the thing. The schizo is at the limit of, what it's at the limit of is particular historical regimes where the despotic signifier has crushed chains and crushed them flat with its master signification. In Lacan's sort of structuralism, and they're kind of marrying it to a historical thing. They're combining Lacan's linguistics with, like, I don't know, social anthropology. But the specific things that the master signifier, the despotic signifier, does is they flatten them from the angle of the polyvocal, which, you know, there's a multitude of meanings and things. No, there's one-to-one correspondence. Crush it. Crush it, crush it, crush it. This is what the master signifier does. The schizo is at the limit of it only when you're able to understand that it's in a position where the despotic signifier is crushing, linearizing, and all of this. That's what the schizo sort of exists to do or plays with, more or less. Does that make sense? I hope it makes some sense. Does the schizo seek the trace of the code within the decoded? No, that gives a lot more awareness of what the schizo is doing to the schizo than that. Again, it is about how all of these machines sort of interplay, because you can only understand the schizo doing this it has to be understood the social codes where the despotic signifier crushes all the chains, linearizes them, biunivocalizes, and makes use of the bricks as so many. The despotic signifier is utilizing the bricks to make a hyperdeterminist wall of meaning that are flattened and placed in place and building up. The schizo is not the reaction to this, but the schiz as process is the breakdown of these things, is the decoding, because you're talking about detaching the bricks, unsealing them and their multiplicities that are within, carrying them off in directions to recover polyvocity, and that is the code of desire. The schizo is in pursuit of the code of desire, but it isn't aware of it in that way. The schiz isn't like aware or trying. It's not aware of any of this shit. I heard someone wanting to jump in. All right. Is that you, Woody Woo? Do mute up. It might have been you. Yeah, that's probably how I'd phrase it. I'm not meaning it as a schizo being aware of seeking a trace of code, but unconsciously inclined. I'm still hesitant to say that there's that directionality. The thing that they exist at, the very specific thing, and we'll talk about this. You know what? Let me do the next sentence, and then we'll come back and make sure, because I think the next sentence also touches this in the same way, so I can have it all at once. But always the schizo detaches them, the bricks, unseals them, carries them off in all directions to recover new polyvocity, which is the code of desire. Again, the three steps of the schizo, the crushing, the linearizing, and the biunivocalizing. Here, the skids is working in opposition to these things directly. It is detachment against the crushing. It is unsealing against linearizing. It is carrying off against biunivocalizing, carrying off. It's not one-to-one correspondence or transfer or translation. It's a multitude. The wording that they use here, the detaching, there's not a great word for it in English. Deceler. It's like the words you would use if you were a bricklayer. It's like prying something out of the mortar and breaking it down. It's breaking a seal. The schiz does this. This is the thing. It's the thing it's driving at. It's dismantling the wall, breaking open the sealed inscriptions, right? I debated delaminated, but it doesn't really read very well at all. And people don't really know what delamination is anyway. So,
and Brooks, if I can add here, I think that your analysis is really good. And if I could add that, I think this is just largely drawing from Lacan's symbolic order, because for Lacan, when you look at signs, he views them as defined exclusively. Like a dog is not a cat, it's not a Matt, it's not Discord, it's not Brooks. But then the beauty of Lacan is that Lacan also recognizes the fluidity of language too. So he has to introduce mobilization into the signifying chain, and he does that through a despotic signifier. And in the case of a despotic signifier, we have a signifier without a signified. So as that's shifting through a symbolic chain, all of these terms are changing meaning. So they're praising Lacan here for two things: the mobility, first of all, and the second part being that the fact that there exists this chain that operates as a code. The brilliance of their critique of linguistic structuralism here of Lacan is that they're saying, what if it's not only one chain, but what if we incorporate other things outside of a classic linguistic structuralism, like pictograms, machines, and other types of things, and rather than defining them by univocally, such as a dog is not a cat or not this, we instead define machines by their capacities, what they can do, rather than what they are.
Yeah, and I'd go one step more, because I think they're, again, because these aren't really meant to be multiple steps in a process, they went and they looked at, and again, this is why Jelmslev is super important here. Jelmslev's entire linguistics and semiotics is founded on figura. And the idea of figura is simple. They're all the parts of things, the syntactical elements or the experience of things that have themselves no meaning. They're the pieces of, like right now on the computer monitor, you're looking. That all of those things are meaningless in and of themselves. Each single pixel, each single part of a letter, or if you're hearing me, it's every single moment vibration only exists in meaning in relation to others, but every single one is a figure. It has nothing itself. And so they're saying all of these pieces, this is the first thing, it's connective. And then we have these bricks where we've taken that and said, no, this is the thing, to what you're saying, Noah, that the cat means this. It's biunivocalized because of the master signification. And they're saying, if you actually chase it back, what if there is no meaning at the beginning, and that's actually fine, and the meaning is actually generated in the speaking of the word, in the cut, in the resonance that's actually enabled there. And this is what the schiz does. The schizophrenic helps to build, because the phrase they use, and I really love it, carries them off in all directions to recover a new polyvocity, which is the code of desire. To recover a new polyvocity, retrouver literally means to find again. Hurley removes this. Hurley says this is to create a new polyvocity. No, it is to recover this, because this is actually the semiotics of desire that is at the base here. The base structure of this is that desire has a code. Like, that's the thing that is important, the code of desire.
Right. And that's why in this synthesis, take the mouth machine. The mouth connects to a breast, disconnects and connects to a thumb, disconnects and connects to a doorknob or whatever. And the mouth machine is defined by the capacities, and that's all inclusive here. Whereas for Lacan, he's saying, no, we're not defining the mouth by the inscription, by the code that it carries. We're instead defining it by what it is not. And then that still assumes a kind of universal understanding of what it is in the first place. And I love what you said about how, like, the meaning of it, its genesis is how it is inscribed inside of a polyvocal chain, or something along those lines. I forget the wording exactly, but yeah, I think that was pretty clean.
Well, and it's the reason they go through the process, and we talk about them as these are to use Kant's language, which is what they're doing. These syntheses are syllogisms. This is the proper, to say proper is kind of a weird idealistic term for this, but this is like the way that desire functions. Desire has there's a code of desire, and that code is polyvocal, fundamentally polyvocal. The master signifier, the despotic signifier that flattens, encodes, and biunivocalizes, crushes that. The schizophrenic as clinical entity is a person, but the schiz is the moment where the biunivocal word is being broken apart, or the jargon is being destroyed so it can become polyvocal again. That push is the healthy push. The problem is, of course, that it's in a world where that is not the healthy thing to do. So as such, a person that ends up going down that road and doing this over and over and over and over, the case of the schizo, as they talk about it, that process is one that produces a person who is broken and unhealthy, because the process was forced to end prematurely. It wasn't allowed to continue. It wasn't, the process is, again, not, there's no process that makes a person. Every person is a multitude of processes, an extraordinary number. The code of desire is the one that's polyvocal, and that's what's being recovered. And it's really important when you sort of have these setups as we talk about them, because the resolution of Hurley's, which is to create a new polyvocity, as if desire doesn't have one, is the Landian accelerationist problem. It's an appropriation of the original work fundamentally. Again, this is one of the reasons I blame Hurley for Land, and I think a lot of this translation is actually responsible for some of the worst readings of Deleuze that exist on the planet, is because of shit like this. It's about recovery. It's unsealing the bricks. It is not manufacturing them, right? The chains are crushed. They're not destroyed. Recovering doesn't mean just getting to like something closer. It doesn't mean building new. It is the actual process of getting to desire's process itself. And it's a really, really particular thing. But it's, fucking the translation, genuinely unbelievable here. Really frustrating. Really frustrating. Every composition and also every decomposition is done by mobile bricks. General principle, stated plain. And there is symmetry in this that's really basic and easy, and I like when they do this. It makes it simple, right? Composition and decomposition use the same units and the same operation. That's it. It's the same operation. I mean, that's it. There's no privileged direction of composition or decomposition. There's no privilege there of one versus the other. One is not better than the other. One is not worse than the other. That's not the thing. We're going to be getting into some really complex neurology here, And this is kind of prefiguring a little bit of that because we're going to be talking about disorders from Manichaeo. We'll get to kind of all of that. It's going to be a lot. But this is straight up like the Spinozist ethics, right? I don't know how else to, like, Spinoza talks about physical digression, that bodies themselves become individuated by ratios of motion and rest. What we call death is decomposition of that ratio. It's not a destruction of parts. This is that same sort of statement, right? The parts pass into other ratios. Things change and they shift and the ratios change. That is what death is. Death is not the addition of death, and death is not the elimination of life. It's instead ratios and how they play. Deleuze really attaches to this in his books on Spinoza, but this is that statement sort of really played out really hard. Okay. Manichaeo this is going to be a lot. And I don't care if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but this is going to be a lot. I'm going to try my best to explain a handful of these things. Okay. I have my notes here. If I get any of this wrong, I am not a neurologist, nor am I a doctor. So don't. Dieschesis and diaspasis, Manichaeo said. Either a lesion extends, following fibers that connect it to other regions, and provokes at a distance incomprehensible phenomena from a purely mechanistic point of view, but not machinic. Or a disorder of the humoral life entails a diversion of nervous energy and the institution of broken, fragmented directions in the sphere of instincts. Okay. Manichaeo was a Swiss neurologist. Manichaeo and Moorg are like together, like the package that people tend to talk about as this thing. They wrote a huge thing and they became a huge deal in Paris in the late 1920s, early 1930s. The idea was that through material observation and medical observation, this is early medicine. Again, just remember that early 19th century shit. But what you would notice is that if you had this focal lesion, what it would do is it would produce functional depression in anatomically distant but connected regions. I'm just reading words from the book. So what it means is that the deficit you observe cannot be read off the location of the damage. Yeah. Versus diaspasis, which is a humoral thing. And humors are, various parts of the body, liquids of the body is a whole fucking weird language thing there. But the idea would be that it's instead, for that one, a disturbance that propagates through the fluid and metabolic economy rather than along the fibers of the body. Dieschesis, diaspasis. A lesion extends following fibers that connect it to the regions, that promotes distance incomprehensible phenomena. You're sick here over the fibers of your body, nerves, muscles, whatever. It's actually fucking you up here. Versus humoral life that is nervous energy with broken fragmented directions in the sphere of instincts. This is their language, but the reason doesn't even matter. Like, you're not going to get a medical degree by reading these guys. Let me just say that up front. This is not the best medical shit you'll ever read. But there is like empirical grounding in this, and they want to use that. Dieschesis specifically is a neurological argument against this idea of the local, the idea that the nervous system is a machine where certain parts do certain things at certain addresses. We have this image today. You have this image. When you take a look at how people talk about grow a spine, what your brainstem does, what your brain does, where is you? You're in your head, but it's not. That's not how it works. That there are the ideas that different parts of the nervous system are there for very particular and local and fixed things, right? So with that, effects should appear where the lesions appear, because The lesion's in this one area of the brain. That means that it's going to do X. But that's not really how it works. Effects will appear where there's no lesion. This is what the book kind of goes into. It's a long, weird way to get around to, boy, it's like Dr. House. Wow, the lesion, there's no lesion. We'd think there would be there because that's where that should be affecting it. Because this is this mechanistic view of things. It's not machinic. But it's a purely mechanistic view, right? A machine part broke. That's where that it's broken. That's where we should see the breakdown, but we're seeing breakdown in other parts of these things. Because mechanism as a thing, the idea of it, the worldview of it requires this contiguous, unbroken transmission and fixed functions. From a machinic point of view, but not machinic, from a machinic point of view, which is a completely different thing, this is exactly what you'd expect. Fully. Because the machinic is defined by connections that are cut, and these are cut across heterogeneous registers where there is no governing plan. The mechanism, machinism, and it's a one-letter fucking difference. 2 letters? 2 letters. 2-letter difference. Mechanism versus machinism. Okay? It's going to be the opposition that they're really trying to play out the whole book. It's machinic, not mechanical. Okay? And this is like the clinical version of this. That's diaskesis. Diaspasis is important for a different reason. If you think this is tough, by the way, chapter 2 is going to be a fucking nightmare. Like chapter 2 is like every other fucking page has shit like this, where it's like, let's go look into some fucking debunked garbage from some weirdos that like no one will ever use, and it's not knowledge I'll ever need. But they make a point. It's like, well, why? And then you have to look into it. It's like, oh, they're making this very, very belabored point to a very unique, because this stuff, Mancout was like really big in clinical circles at the time. How do you reduce quality? There's on YouTube or here. You should be able to click on options and change stream quality. I would say watch it on YouTube. You can close it here and watch it on YouTube too. But if I click, it seems to work pretty well. It's a diaspasis. Talks about the humoral. Your humors are the fluid economy of your body. Like, again, it's a very outdated way to talk about this, but we have to, so it doesn't matter. The body's fluid economy has broken, fragmented directions in the sphere of instincts. This is a materialist attempt to account how, like, our instinctual, drive-based, pushed life is fragmented without a recourse directly to representation. Because the humoral life entails a diversion of nervous energy and the institution of broken, fragmented directions. They're kind of talking about sort of this psychiatric lineage that was never psychoanalytic. It's whatever, doesn't matter, short version. They're endorsing this idea that there is empirically biological mechanisms of fragmentation that are not localizable in the way that we tended to think of things at the time. Again, right now, that is not the case. This is not how people work now. People are very much in the good versions of this that are around. They don't have these same views. So again, this is, hey, you want to learn something? You have to unlearn? Yay. It's playing with old BS that we don't really know. We don't need to know. You don't need to know. It doesn't matter, because that's not the point of it. They're just using these like empirical medical things that are very popular at the time to make their point. This is very similar to what they were doing with like Judge Schreber or the Wolfman or Freud's or anyone else's other things. it isn't that that is like a perfect example of a thing. It's that it's a perfect example to use and that they're able to then continue to make their point through it. And mechanistic versus machinic is the point, more or less. Yes. The bricks are the essential pieces of machines of desire from the point of view of the procedure of registration. At once, component parts and products of decomposition that are localized spatially only at such or such a moment in relation to the great chronogenous machine that is the nervous system. Melodic machine of the music box type with non-spatial localization. So bricks are simultaneously what things are made of and what things break into. They're both of those at once. They're both of those at once. We'll get to it, Collie. I mean, that's it. They're both of them at once. And they're going to say it over and over and over, like they've been saying it over and over and over. The important term, I think, for me, and it's the one you might notice is a weird word that I added in here, the chronogenous machine. Chronogene is a time-generating machine. Chronogenous doesn't mean with time. It's the time generation machine, chronogene. The nervous system, and that's brain and everything. I don't just mean your nerves. Like the nervous system at large, your sensory apparatus or experiential apparatus, whatever, it doesn't really occupy space. It doesn't really unfold in time. They're talking about the mind and the nervous system as actually generating time. And these local spatial things are momentary and derivative determinations within that generation. Okay? This is Bergson. This is Matter and Memory. This is Matter and Memory. This is Matter and Memory. Go read Bergson. In it, Bergson basically argues that memory is not stored anywhere in the brain. You don't have it's not like you have a file here or a filing cabinet here or whatever. That's not how it works, right? And he uses these lesion studies. That's why they go with it, because he's like, hey, if the lesion studies where people have lesions on their brain, they show that the brain interrupts and selects. It doesn't actually conserve. So the error for him of psychology is to spatialize duration or durée. They use the example of the music box, which is, yes, another Bergy thing, right? A music box produces a melody. The melody is the image of multiplicity, whose parts interpenetrate and cannot be laid out side by side. That's what a music box is. There's non-spatial localization inside of it. That's the deal it's doing. Deleuze used this example, I think, in Bergsonism too. I think he also used Manicow there. A lot of this comes from Bergson. So, in short, registration is temporal, not really spatial. Temporal way before it is spatial. And it's generating time. It's generating time. Right? And this is why the second synthesis produces a surface, a plane. They will come to call this the plane of consistency for a reason, because it's not a place. The BWO is not a place. It is a surface. It is a plane, right? And the BWO, is a surface of inscription, but it is not an anatomical body. Oh, 1 second. Hello?
Taking the kids. Gonna give it a try.
Good luck with it. Is Dex going too? Oh, nice.
I mean, he's not gonna go for the day. He's going. So
Oh, cool. Cool. Do you need me to jump it or?
I didn't try it yet. Bring it.
Good luck. Good luck.
Keep your phone on.
Yes, it's on and waiting.
Okay.
And Heather's got to take the Jeep, get the kids. I don't have the new plugs, so she's taking the jumper. What a fucking nightmare. Man, cars. And I'm lucky when it comes to cars. That Jeep has withstood everything. And the market right now is just no fun for that. What the fuck, where was I? Yeah, registration is temporal before it is spatial. That's it. What makes the unequaled character of the book by Monaco and Morg, by which it infinitely surpasses all the Jacksonism from which it draws inspiration, is the theory of bricks, of their detachement and their fragmentation, but is above all what such a theory supposes, to have introduced desire into neurology. That's it. There's Jackson was a guy who in like the 1800s introduced this idea of a hierarchy of your nervous system, right? And it really had to do with, and I was taught this in elementary school. It had to do with evolution growing. So, you know, you have your mammal brain, your lizard brain, your insect brain, like that stupid bullshit. You have your human, and you're in this hierarchy of it. That's Jacksonism. And it was dominant for a long time, still dominant amongst everyone, because we're fucked. That's what Jacksonism is. John Jackson was the guy who did that. So like that's your lizard brain coming out. It's like you have a hierarchy of it due to like evolution, which is stupid. Like if you know anything about these things, it's just stupid. And it's just like building dumb shit in. Monaco and Morg were in opposition to that framework. And they basically did these studies to show that. They're very complicated and their results aren't, again, in line with what we understand today, but they are absolutely dismantling Jacksonism. That's 100% why they're in here. And the big deal is, and they were just like they talked about with Lacan. Lacan found a way to marry desire into linguistics. Deleuze credits Klosowski with putting desire in the infrastructure of capital. Here we are with them saying, oh, look, you've introduced desire into neurology. There you go. That's it. Having introduced desire into neurology is the accomplishment. Like that's the thing. It's the dissolving of the biological into the social. They want a neurology to exist, but it's a neurology that includes desire. It's not a critique that evacuates neurology. Again, their anti-psychiatry is not about, it's a desire being introduced to psychiatry. It's not the dissolving of psychiatry. Right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. By that logic, I have a fisheye lizard. No, actually, if you should read Susan Oyama's Evolution's Eye, because there were people who talked about this and actually said shit like that very much unironically. And again, I was taught this. Like we want to laugh about a little bit of this. This is 100% what was taught in American schools, at least prior to 2000, and I'm guessing it's worse now. Does this work with the chronogenic definition of nerves? I'm sorry. Could the definition of time, God damn it, Arachne, with your difficult questions. Could the definition of time as the change differentiation of structure be applied in this view? No. This is the generation of time happens in this. The time is actually generated. This is not the observing of time. This is the actual creation of time happens here. For all of us, this is the place that it happens. So it's a generation of it. That's I would probably say that. And I think the next one actually closes section 5 out. Creation of time happens internally. I mean, define internal to what? Right now we're talking about it happening as part of, it's internal to the, chronogenic. The bricks are the essential pieces of machines of desire from the point of view of the procedure of registration. At once, component parts and products of decomposition that are localized spatially only at such and such a moment. They're only localized spatially at this moment or that moment. It's contingent and it happens in that moment. At once, component parts and products of decomposition in relation to the great chronogenous machine that is the nervous system. The nervous system here, non-spatially localized, generates time. So the definition of time is marked by structural changes subsequent to production. Yes, as I understand it here, but again, ask me again in a week because this is the fun. That's a question that feels like it should have been asked immediately. But again, in English, we've never actually had this conversation. So what can I say? So Anton, we actually don't. We actually don't. That's, again, fun stuff. All of us are taught really weird shit here. But let's, I want to finish section 5. Perfect. Nice and slow and small. Okay. So we have spent time talking about the first and second characteristics of the machine, right? Of desiring machines. Cut extraction that operates on flux and cut detachement that operates on chains. And this, at the end here, is again talking about desire being put into neurology, the generation of time, all of that stuff, right? Like all of that fun stuff, right? Now, we have the third cut. Okay. And it's going to lead into the next chapter, which I'm not reading the next chapter. Enjoy the cliffhanger feeling that this has, because there's no way to not have that at the end of this. The third cut is the third synthesis. Obviously, that's what we've been doing here. Unlike synthesis 1 and 2, or unlike the first two cuts, this one isn't about the production of an object. It is not about the production of stock or registration of that stock. This is where the subject is produced. And it is produced as leftover. Like leftover. And a lot is going to be said here and then reconsolidated. You're going to get some direct Lacan shit in here, where they fully reject castration as a model. There's going to be a lot of different metaphors and things to play with. And I just have, because I thought I went through and corrected these, that's okay. That's fine. Both of these are not full body. Full body's not in this paragraph. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. So just ignore that I just did that and that I'm stupid sometimes. It happens. I should have gotten both of them. Did it get both of them? No. No. Shit. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. And it fucked up again, didn't it? Yes, it did. That's okay. All right. That's okay. I'll go back and refix it later. Off we read. Is everyone ready? The third cut of the machine of desire is the residual cut, or residue, which produces a subject beside the machine, a piece adjacent to the machine. And if this subject has no specific or personal identity, if it traverses the body without organs, without breaking its indifference, it is because it is not only a part beside the machine, but a part itself shared, to which there return parts corresponding to the detachments of chain, to the extractions of flux operated by the machine. Thus it consumes the states through which it passes, and is born from these states, always concluded from these states as a part made of parts, each of which fills at a moment the body without organs. Which permits Lacan to develop a machinic game more than etymological, perere, to procure, separare, to separate, separare, to engender oneself, the French term, Lacanian shit, by marking the intensive character of such a game. The part has nothing to do with the whole. It plays its part alone. Here it is from its partition that the subject proceeds to its parturition, which is why the subject can procure for itself what here concerns it. This is all Lacan's text. Nothing in the life of anyone unleashes more persistence in arriving there. To be parse, it would readily sacrifice a great part of its interests. End quote. No more than the other cuts, the subjective cut designates a lack, but on the contrary, a part that returns to the subject as share, a revenue that returns to the subject as remainder. There again, how much the Oedipal model of castration is a bad model. It is that the cuts are not the fact of an analysis, they are themselves syntheses. It is the syntheses that produce the divisions. That one consider the example of the return of milk in the child's belch. It is at once restitution of extraction on the associative flux, reproduction of detachment on the signifying chain, residue that returns to the subject for its own share. The machine of desire is not a metaphor. It is what cuts and is cut according to these three modes. The first mode refers to connective synthesis and mobilizes libido as the energy of extraction. The second to disjunctive synthesis and mobilizes numen as the energy of detachement. The third to conjunctive synthesis and voluptas as residual energy. It is under these three aspects that the process of desire and production is simultaneously production of recording, production of consumption. To extract, to detach, to remain. It is to produce, and it is to effectuate the real operations of desire. One of the things that's really tough about this, and I'm very open to ideas on how to handle, the French plays with very specific words here. Part and partie. We'll get to exactly what the difference is, but it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. The third cut of the machine of desire is the residual cut, or residue, which produces a subject beside the machine, a piece adjacent to the machine. All right. We started with cut extraction, went to cut detachement, now cut remainder, cut residue cut, residual cut, right? This is the connective, disjunctive, and conjunctive. The three of them sort of laid out, okay? This is the thing they're sort of driving at. The subject is not the machine's operator. You're not driving, okay? That's not it. That's not what you do. You're also not its interior. You're also not looking at it from the outside. You're not the point from which all of this is surveyed. You are a spare part that is lying next to all the rest of it. This is anti-phenomenological. This is anti-Cartesian. This is, name a thing. This is one of the more radical positions of the thing. Like, just genuinely. Consciousness is not a unity of synthetic elements that gathers the operations of the machine together. The subject, consciousness, you, as you experience things, is what falls out of all of this. So, peace is interesting. A piece adjacent to the machine. Specifically, it's really about it being like a spare part, a part spare, like, right? It's a very particular distinction. And they kind of announce in this first line the problem that they're going to be. For me, that's why I want to talk about this, because as we go and as I went, it's already something that you sort of get fucked with. Hurley translates all of this as part adjacent to the machine, but it's not. It really isn't. It really isn't. The subject is a piece, Piece, a piece adjacent. It is not a share or a part of the machine. Right? It's the closest, and again, it's maybe Hurley's right, but it's, again, there's an intonation quality to it. If you were to see a bunch of Legos and you have a piece next to it, oh, that's a part of that set. That's not what it means here. It's a part as if something kicked off to the side and was left. It's a piece. Détaché. It's a detached piece. It's a broken piece, not a piece that fits or is part of it. Piece is the right way to go about this. It's going to be a lot as we go through, but that is a very particular usage here, right? And it's a big shift. Because again, just to shit on Hurley for a moment, Hurley translates this opening sentence as: the third type of interruption or break characteristic of the desire machine is the residual break or residuum. Good fucking God. I like can't even mentally handle that. It's a 4-word thing. He makes 11 words. And it's really problematic. And actually, it should be, I probably should change residual cut to cut remainder. Or, because cut residual, like the coupre resta, the slice or the cut of the residual. It probably is better. I probably should do it, because I've been reading the other page so much now. Yeah, I think that's probably the best bet. Cut residual. Yeah. Cut residual. Or resta. Resta is also a remainder. I'm going to leave it for now. Stuff left on the knife after cutting. Yes. 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 I mean, you're joking, but you're not joking. Yes. And at every cut. Yes. It's the remainder. Like the way carrot sticks to the blade. Like the way the residue of the carrot sticks to the blade. Like the way that if you use a knife that's, fresh and cleaned, and you cut butter, it leaves oil on it. But it doesn't like leave butter on it. Not really. It leaves it oily. Leaves it oily. There's a residue of the thing having happened. It's not fully that you cut and like a slice of the carrot comes with. No, not that. It's the residue, the remainder. That's not part of that as a thing. This actually will explain it, but it's going to be a lot, and I'm apologizing in advance for a lot of rambles here. And if this subject has no specific or personal identity, if it traverses the body without organs, without breaking its indifference, forgive the fucked up coding, it is because it is not only a part beside the machine, but a part itself shared, to which there return parts corresponding to the detachments of chain and to the extractions of flux operated by the machine. So the subject has this peculiar mode of existing, okay? And it exists from the derivation of these two prior cuts that have happened, right? But why is there no fixed identity? Well, that's because it's not just purely a simple leftover. That like having a Lego piece or a slice of carrot when you're cutting into it. That's not it. It is instead a leftover itself is a thing that is divided up. But the divisions it receives are the residue of that chain detachement of the flex extractions that are being performed by the machines. The actions of the machine, the cuts at the various registers, have that extra little bit of residue left over. So this internal fragmentation we experience, which is pathological, like it's in us, right? But it's not pathological. It's not psychological. It is the consequence of a machine that has other types of cuts. There's these other cuts that happen, and the machine's doing them on different registers, and the machine also does us. It's not that we are pathologically internally inconsistent. It's that we're mechanically internally consistent, which is very different. It's different cuts. It's not personological, right? It is not a single strange subject, right, as a thing. Instead, it's like very particular, not the share it takes of the product. It is the detachment afterwards. If there is no specific and personal identity, if it traverses the body without breaking its indifference, the BWO is an indifferent thing. Like the subject, and they talk about this and they will use this language a lot. It's why they're saying this here. Like the BWO is this surface of anti-production. It is unproductive. It is intensity zero, right? And the subject can move across it without disturbing that indifference. It's because the subject is itself not a distinct organization that is laid over all of this. It is a residue of operations occurring on the BWO, of resonances between things and elements and the production of it there. Right? Right? Does that make sense? Like the indifference is the BWO's refusal to distribute and organize. It's anti-organizational as a thing. A subject that broke that would be an organism. So it's able to cross this because of that. It is because it is not only a part beside the machine, but a part itself shared, to which there return parts corresponding to the detachments of chain and to the extractions of flux. All of this comes back to us. This is Nietzsche. This is Nietzsche. This subject passes through states without acquiring identity, right? Join us Thursdays for Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle. That's a good reading, noon, Thursdays. And they're going to literally cite the book, by the way. I think it's in this paragraph, actually, they cite that book directly. Like the whole idea of individualities that must be traversed by each of the types of energy, each of the types of design, like that thing, the residual subject is what this traversal leaves behind, spread over circumference of the circle that I have deserted. Le moi, that the me has deserted, the ego, which is what that's translated as normally. So does the BW have residue? No. I mean, Yes. All of it has residue. Technically, it's all produced. So all of it is producing. Yeah. It's all part of the machine. So let's continue. Thus, it consumes the states through which it passes, and is born from these states, always concluded from these states, as a part made of parts, each of which fills at a moment the body without organs. This is the third synthesis shrunk a bit. Okay. They call it the third synthesis, that of consumption consummation, the birth from states. And the subject is the conclusion of that, right? So every element of this is going to count. Consuming the states that you pass through, that the subject passes through, rather than consuming the objects, is what makes the conjunctive a synthesis of intensities, not of goods or what is registered, of bricks. The subject doesn't eat bricks. It eats it eats the states through which it passes. Okay? The subject doesn't really eat. It's the wrong way. But it's undergoing, like, the consumes is such it's eats is the wrong word. Consumes is the right word, Brooks. Stop doing that. Again, I've had many bad explanations of this. Color me. So it's not eating states. It's the wrong language. Forgive me. Some shit is just built in too many times. It consumes the states. It's not eats. This is, again, Marx. I need to get the other readings out of my head. It's very difficult to pull those things out after being part of it for so long. The consumer, if you don't know Marx, Marx is pretty simple. You should read his books. They're good. Production happens all at once. There is no consumption without production. There is no production without consumption. We go, oh, but no one buys a thing. So therefore, no, that's not the thing. That's not what you're consuming that, even if you're not buying it. Buying doesn't mean consumption. Consumption and production are, coextensive. Consumption, the consumer is produced in the act of production. This is Marx, but Society of the Spectacle goes over this very, very, very well. It says it very, 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 very well. Hurley says it consumes and consummates each state. That's good for Hurley. In the French here, there is only consumes. He is bringing shit from way earlier in the book here. It's consumes, consume. It's very specific here. And again, he adds a lot of language here that there's a reason people sort of add the language around eating or what they're doing. It's just no. Bad. Fills the body without organs at a moment is probably better phrasing for me here. It's tough to get this wording exactly right. But no, there's a thing here. The other one that's really big is always concluded from these states as a part made of parts. Concluded. This is a logic, conclusion. This is he's using logic terms in all of this for a reason. Paralogism, syllogism, all of these. Always concluded from these states as a part made of parts. Inference. Conclusions are inferences. This is the term at the base of this syllogism. So the third synthesis is one of the so it's me, C'est donc moi. So it is me. Therefore it is me. So it's me. C'est donc. Donc means like therefore. It's such a fucking great word we don't have in English. I wish we had that word in English. But sorry. Stop going down rabbit holes, Brooks. The subject here is a conclusion drawn from a series of premises it did not choose and does not survey or look over and select. So if we remember earlier, we talked about the conjunctive synthesis, where it was the synthesis of the so-its, right? Concluded was there too. The synthesis of the so-its, the conclusion, the inference. The whole point is like that this synthesis is almost like a joke about syllogism, because the cogito, the subject we tend to talk about, is basically being wholly replaced by an inference that the subject arrives at after and is always wrong, right? It's always wrong. So it's concluded from these states made of parts, each of which fills the body without organs at the moment. Yeah. And then there's this big Lacan fucking thing. I don't even know if I want to. I'm not going to reread it because it's a lot. This is Eckert's. I can't remember exactly which one this is. I'm sorry. There's a footnote and you can go find it yourself. It's fine. But this is about separation for Lacan, right? So he's taking a handful of like Latin words, and this is him reading Latin, going into French, us reading it in French and reading the Latin and translating it to English. But he's doing more or less the same thing here. Pereire, separer, and se pereire. These are three different words, right? But they're almost identical to each other, like what Magenta's doing in Discord chat right now. It's that very much the same thing. So we start with pereire. Pereira. I'm not going to pronounce Latin right. I don't really give a fuck. So I don't give a shit. But it is to furnish, to procure. That's the first thing. So like you will like bear offspring. You furnish the dinner for the group. It means obtain as well. There's a complexity there, but it's like to procure. Séparer is to separate. And then separate. Weird, right? Separate. I know. But then the next one, which is séparer, which is there's a space in there. To engender oneself, right? These three things, as Lacan's going through them, the operation that's happening is the operation of separation from the big other, the other with the big O, right? Lacan is playing with words here to talk about how that production is simultaneously procurement, division, and self-birth or self-engendering, right? To engender oneself. This is what he's kind of going through, and he's sort of laying out. This is Guattari. When Guattari is on fire, like it's hard for me not to say I just adore, because I would never have gotten what Guattari pulls out of this. I'm assuming Guattari. It may have been Deleuze, but I'm going to assume Guattari, because again, normally they are very much attacking Lacan kind of across the board, but here is actually one that is a really, I don't know, a fucking weird reading of it. Instead of just reading it directly and going, oh yeah, this is blah, 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 lack subject, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, what if this isn't etymological? What if it's instead actually machinic? And the chain of pereire, sep pereire, se pereire, pars, part, partition, parturition is not discovery about the history of Latin as operative as it sets up, as couplings of heterogeneous elements, but instead the exact kind of thing that they've been talking about is a chain of signs from different alphabets. Yelmslev does this expertly in his writing a handful of times. You're going to hear it a few times in my upcoming video if I ever finish it. But the way language can be used in this way is talking about the second syntheses. And here they're basically saying, see, Lacan even understands the second syntheses. He's even saying the same thing, right? Lacan is practitioner of the machine against Lacan, the theorist of the signifier, the good against the stuff they disagree with. And again, they will go on to say, and it makes a lot of sense, that Lacan's later work is actually moving away from this like structuralist reading, and even his object in later works is machinic. And that's what they're sort of driving at as a thing. One more time, what, Magenta? I don't understand you people at all. And YouTube hasn't said a thing in like 10 minutes, at least. So they stopped paying attention. I don't understand any of this, or even. You don't have to. They're going to bring it back around. This is them building out. This is them building out the third syntheses as it functions. And they're using a handful of other things to sort of make the point of what it is or how it functions. And so they're leaning on Lacan. They're leaning on a handful of other things. I hope it'll make sense by the end of it. But we're going to keep going and we'll get there. No more than the other cuts, the subjective cut designates a lack, but on the contrary, a part that returns to the subject as share, a revenue that returns to the subject as remainder. There again, how much the Oedipal model of castration is a bad model. So they just use this Lacan citation, and they, like I said, they're really doing it as like a polemic and growing it in a very particular way. So they talk about separation, and separation for Lacan tends to mean castration as a thing, right? That's it. Yeah, that's the thing. But they're like, no, it's not that what it produces is lack. What returns to the subject is actually a share and remainder. And these are positive quantities. It is what falls to someone. The remainder is giving someone their due, like an inheritance or a stock dividend. And they're using that language very specifically because, again, it's income. They say this as, but on the contrary, a part that returns to the subject is share, a revenue that returns to the subject as remainder. They're being very specific, again, to talk about this as a capitalist subject or as a economic thing, as they're sort of driving, right? The theory of subject is in the vocabulary of distribution and revenue. And revenue is important. A revenue that returns to the subject as remainder, dividend. Remainder, dividend might be even better. It's part of that. It's the return on investment, you might even say. It's a little bit overreaching, but it's not wildly far off. Not wildly far off. It is that the cuts are not the fact of an analysis. They are themselves syntheses. Remember, the machine cuts in 3 separate registers, and the cuts happen at once. The desiring machines cut on 3 registers. If the cuts were a result of analysis, of decomposition or deconstruction being performed on something that were whole already, if it was things are whole and we're breaking them apart with the schiz, which is again how a lot of people misinterpret this fucking book, then every cut would, yes, actually leave a gap. It absolutely would. It's every cup would leave a gap. And lack would be the thing that came with that. But there is no prior whole. The cuts themselves are the syntheses. They are constitutive operations of existence. They're not separations of things that were actually fully joined that we're breaking down. This is the fucking first paragraph of the book restated, I think, extremely bluntly. Extremely bluntly. It is the syntheses that produce the divisions. Okay. You want to talk about the normal way we understand divisions, right? Usually we divide something in order to synthesize its parts. Hegel, how you doing? No. Division is downstream of synthesis, which is weird. It's super weird. It's super weird. Okay. This is not about schizoanalysis being a fundamentally decomposing thing. This is, again, an affirming, positive, production-based setup. They are going to be tracing syntheses and legitimate or illegitimate uses of it. But division is not a thing that it starts with. It is a thing that synthesis produces here. Okay? It is the syntheses that produce divisions. Did one consider the example of the return of milk in the child's belch? Babies eat milk and then vomit on mom. Or dad. Mostly mom, probably. This happens a lot. Let's talk about what it could be. Did one consider the example of the return of milk in the child's belch? It is at once restitution of extraction on the associative flux, reproduction of detachement on the signifying chain, residue that returns to the subject for its own share. It's an intentionally banal example and really boring because it is also very much the same scene psychoanalysis minds for, you know, breasts, partial objects, first loss, all of that stuff. Psychoanalysis loves boob feeding as a thing. So a baby vomits up some milk, right? They talk about it as running 3 cuts at once. This is the event is actually running 3 cuts at once. Okay. First is the milk that comes back is actually a restitution of that which was levied from the flow. It is also reproduction of a detachment on the chain, and it is also residue. It's also residue that falls to the subject as its own share. There is nothing in the belching or vomiting, the burping, the spit up, whatever you want to call it, that is lost. Nothing is first experienced as absence. It is not first negative. It is all affirmative. The infant is not learning here about lack. That's what psychoanalysis talks about. It is a machine operating in 3 registers at once, and they're all affirming and all producing. And the division is actually what is produced. Okay? So it's, yeah, no, exactly. These are going to get really dense. I'm doing my best to make it through these. These are going to be really dense. The machine of desire is not a metaphor. It is what cuts and is cut according to these 3 modes. Okay. They're stating flatly that the machine is not a figure. It is not an analogy. It is not a heuristic. It's not a metaphor, is given straightly here, right? Machine of desire is not a metaphor. It is what cuts and is cut according to those three modes. It isn't the machine that cuts. The cut, what cuts and is cut, is the machine. It is an operational term. Anything that does so is one. This is why we can apply the term machine to the mouth, the breast, the nervous system, the factory, the socius, and there's no equivocation happening here at all. At all. There's no literal machine of which these would be metaphorical instances of them. Is a relationship a machine? Not. It depends. Like, again, is the relationship mouse to the breast? No. The mouth and the breast are machines. Anything that cuts is that. Anything that cuts and is cut. Remember, the binary machine, the three registers, the whole thing. Guattari's machine and structure. I cannot recommend reading it enough. He defines machine against structure. It's anti-structuralist fundamentally by its relation to cutting and to the subject it produces as remainder. In the next section, they're going to be making a huge argument that there is only one kind of production, that everything ultimately just produces what is real, because there's no difference for them between literal and figurative applications, which means that metaphors have no purchase here. So when they say the machine of desire is not a metaphor, it is what cuts and is cut according to these modes. Then they go through each of the modes. Ready? The first mode refers to the connective synthesis, mobilizes libido as the energy of extraction. What's up, Dexy? Bye-bye. Fucking kid. The first mode refers to connective synthesis, mobilizes libido as the energy of extraction. The second, to disjunctive, mobilizes numen, the energy of detachment. Third, the conjunctive synthesis, and voluptas as residual energy. Okay, these are Latin terms. These are Latin old terms, and they're used in a lot of psychoanalytic writing, but they're also used in a lot of stuff. Mostly it's Freud that they're pulling from here, because we're talking about three registers. We're talking about three cuts, and we're talking about three energies. Okay? The energies have been introduced sort of as they go. Right? They talked about Schreber and the conjunctive, right? Where they talked about libido becoming numen, becoming voluptas. A part of libido as production energy converts into the energy of registration energy. And a part of registration energy converts into consumption energy. So that the choice is very particular. Libido is Freud. Done. It's such a good fucking term for it as a thing. Numen, which is out of the registration, is divine. It's about God's ascent, power that manifests in an oracle or an omen. In Roman times, it is what would make a place or object sacred by being present in it. Okay, so they're being very particular here. They're not being like weird and out of. I mean, they're being weird, but they're not being wild. The reason this is noumenal is registration. The recording surface is where the divine appears. This is where it showed up for Schreber, for example. The numinous is matter of inscription and decree. It is not of production. It is energy of decree. The numen. The way that when you read a book, it's as if it's from God or everyone, not the person. You're reading a perfect this is the energy of that is numen. Voluptas is sensual pleasure, and that has a lot of layers in English, a lot of layers. But it doesn't just mean like orgasms or jerking someone off or finger blasting. Like, it's not that. It's not that kind of thing. Okay, this is pleasure in the sense of the sensual. It's not lust for power and selfishness. No. It's not that. It's from Lucretius, actually, to be very specific, where he's taking this from. Venus is the pleasure of men and gods. I think he makes this reference in Logic of Sense as well. Marx talks about it as well. Like this is voluptus, the Venusian. The point is that type of pleasure, enjoyment. But it's not selfishness, really. It's not selfishness, not here. That's not what they're talking about. It is from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Fair enough. We're not pulling from Thus Spoke Zarathustra, though. Because together this kind of plays in a really, these are three different things. Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. There's a big play here that they're sort of doing an almost mock theology. There is a creative power, a divine presence, and a beatitude. Almost, right? Mapping this onto production. And all of this records consumption. It's really fascinating to talk about it that way. I like the language. I find the language very evocative, and I think it's intended to be, ultimately. Because they're going to be going through a lot of stuff later in the book that this conversion process that happens is not Freud's sublimation, which is like desexualizing things, right? For Freud, you need to learn how to properly handle all of your fuck energy and turn it into woodworking. So you can just whittle and carve and be very, very healthy. And that's a good stuff. That's a good use of your energy. Do things capital needs, because fuck energy needs to be converted, sublimated into something. They're not doing that. It's transformations of libido. It's not different energies. Not really. There's no neutral energy. There's no displaced energy. There's no lust that is given up an object to do anything. None of this Freudian shit as you go into it. Freud's like, got wood, get woodworking. Absolutely fair. That is, I believe he wrote a book called I Am a Weird, Creepy, Bougie Fuck Who Jerks Off and Does Coke. It is under these three aspects that the process, that's not true. He didn't write that book. Sorry to lie. I know. One of you just started looking it up and I feel bad. It is under these three aspects of the process of desiring production is simultaneously production of recording, production of consumption. So, all right, remember how I keep saying these things are the cuts happening at multiple registers at once. Multiple registers, multiple regimes at once. This is closing that off and being very, very specific. Very specific. And it's process here. The process is Marxist. It's a very particular term. There's a lot of words they can use here. Okay. It's not processus. It's not procede. It's very specific process, which is a Marxist sense and juridical sense of process, the process of things, right? Kafka kind of thing, the process of that. The three of these named, the passage of them, they fold into each other. They are part of each other. These are not stages. They are three aspects and moments under which one process is described. There's one process. There's one process. Okay? And if you want to get really angry, read Hurley's version. Really terrible. To extract, to detach, to remain, it is to produce, and it is to effectuate the real operations of desire. Good. I'm 2 hours. It's a solid 2 hours to get to this point. Just finished my BA in philosophy today at 46. Good for you, dude. I'm jealous. Good for you. I'm 46 and I don't have a degree, and I keep saying I should have done that. So Timo, everyone, Timo, good shit. Good for you. Just super good for you. Can't tell you how happy I am for you. It's wonderful. I mean that genuinely. Okay. Final line of the fucking, and then we move into section 6 next, which is like cool. Chapter 1, section 6. And it's a lot. And it's only going to get worse from here too. Oh God. Chapter 2 breaks my brain so much. There are 3 infinitives said here in a row. It doesn't really read as well for us. In French, it carries beautiful in every single way. But in English, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Remain has a little bit of quotes on it because it's not really an action you can do, right? It's weird. Infinitives don't really carry. The third synthesis, and it's kind of a joke and play here. The third synthesis makes a verb out of a state. There's no such thing as a state of remain, right? To extract, to detach, to remain, to remainder, to leftover, right? Right? It's very weird. It's a very weird wording, and that's on purpose. That's the subject is what results from the activity of being left over. Remaining is a mode of production. Right? Like that's the point. It's the remainder. We get the word voluptuous from voluptus. Yes. Sensual. Voluptuous. Yeah. Latin's everywhere. Latin is everywhere. So to extract, to detach, to remain is to produce. This is production. To remain is to produce, which is, again, remainder is the mode of production and is the subject. Correct. To remain, which normally we would not think about, but that which remains, the remainder after division, right, that sticks around, it sticks around and is the thing that is consuming. And it happens at once. Extraction, detachment, remainder. Extraction, detachment, remainder. And then it is to effectuate. It is to produce. It is to effectuate the real operations of desire. Effectuation is incredibly specific wording for Deleuze. This means to actualize the virtual. Very specifically. It is, for Deleuze in Logic of Sense, he talks about effectuation as the relation between an incorporeal event and the embodiment of any state of affairs. Counter effectuation as the operation that extracts the event back out. What he's doing here by using it is he's saying that like the 3 cuts are not descriptions of desire. That's not what they are. This is not the types of desire as a thing, right? That would be the wrong way to read this. It's not that there's 3 types of desire. Instead, he's talking about this is like their effectuation. This is the effectuation of desire, the real operations of it. Desire has no existence aside from these things. To extract, to detach, and to remain. That's it. That's it. It's like the most anti-representational statement in the fucking book so far. It's really anti-representational. It's huge. It's a huge line. And it's important because the 6th section, which we're about to read, and I'll give a mini preview, is from here, and they open. In machines of desire, everything functions at the same time, but in the hiatuses and the cuts, the breakdowns and misfirings, the intermittences and the short circuits, the distance and fragmentations, in a sum that never reunites its parts into a whole. That is the next section, the whole and its parts. And the whole point of this, like page, and the whole point, I mean, fucking this entire section as a thing is the 3 energy, all this. We're going to be talking about how these things come together because the whole and its parts is incredibly important to understand that these are not the same thing, nor are they different things. So enjoy that. Enjoy that. Enjoy that. Actually, you should enjoy that. It's a fun time. And with that, I'm going to bounce out. I've got a bunch of shit to take care of. I've got a fucking Jeep to get fixed. I've got some editing to do with my nightmare fucking hour and 20-minute essay that I know no one's going to watch, but I don't give a fuck. Oh, it's a semiotic study in Yomslev, and I'm just excited I finished it. That's genuinely. Like 3 people, I guarantee only like 3 people finish it. It's fine. But I got shit to do, so I'm just going to say, hey, thank you for being here. It's always good to have you. I like having you here. It's a fun time. You guys are all right. If you want to join us live, you're more than welcome to. I'd love that. In fact, I have a very good time doing that. And I would think that your best bet is to join us live, discord.gg/DGQC. If you want to support the channel, want to support what I do, super chats are always very fun. Stream elements, even better. My camera stopped working. Did everything die? What happened? No, I'm still here. Stream elements, best place if you want to just send off a one-time, streamelements.com, DGQC/tip. And of course, you can just join Patreon. $5 a month, cup of coffee a month goes a huge way for me. So it'd be really wonderful. Be watching for videos and streams. Maybe another Jeep stream tonight. Probably not another Jeep stream because tonight is just going to be, I got my new clips and clamps and it's just taking things apart slowly. So I may do that down here. I may do it up there. I may just do an audio stream. I don't know. We'll find out. But, at this point, I would recommend one book above all others that I think will help with anything that happens as we go. And if you're having trouble understanding this, see Malachi's got 2 little cute little fucking flowers. Isn't that nice, Malachi? And that book is Aberrant Movements. Where are you? I know I have a copy of it. Aberrant Movements by La Poujade. Do I not have it? No, I don't have a copy of it. I need to get a copy in here. La Poujade wrote probably one of my favorite books on Deleuze, but is particularly about this very specific place that we're at in Anti-Oedipus. It's called Aberrant Movements. Aberrant Movements. Highly recommended. And I actually can't recommend it enough. For those on YouTube, I'm sending you over to the Surfs because they're having some fun making fun of some really funny people. Say hello from the QC for me, and I will chat with everyone soon enough. And we should be clear.